All right, greetings from the Dark Continent. Conscious Caracal here, or Adams Van Sale, here to shine a light on the goings-on down south. And this time we're going a bit more north in South Africa, but not too far. It's all the way just our neighbors on the northwestern side of South Africa, and that is Botswana. It's actually a country that has been in the news lately for their projections for their economic growth, which I think is something that South Africans quite envy. And we're going to be getting into that. But tonight I'm joined by friend of the show, regular on the channel, Mr. Odin Moja, and then also someone you might recognize from previous episodes, Mr. Koketso Resane. Both of them have already been guests on the show. They have a wealth of knowledge. But tonight we're not going to be, as I told them, we're not going to be delving into specific policies. We're going to be doing more of like a broad overview of a country that both these gents take a lot of pride from, seeing as they're both Tswana men from South Africa. So we're going to be looking at the Tswana Israel, if you will, tonight, shining a light on Botswana. So welcome on the show, gents.
Good to be here, bro.
Great to be here, and good to be here with friends as well. So it feels a little bit better than usual.
All right, excellent. So maybe before we dive in, I'm just going to be giving a little bit of an overview for the audience. Also, welcome to everyone tuning in. I've seen the audience is already growing quite nicely. So just a very small little bit of context. I did my master's thesis on among other countries, Botswana. So I have a little bit of background when it comes to the history. So I'm just going to be taking from that to give you a little bit of a foundation before we get into some of the more interesting, juicy parts of the analysis. So Botswana is an upper middle income landlocked country located in southern Africa, bordered by South Africa, Namibia, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. In 2018, Botswana had a population of 2.2 million. That's very small. When the country officially gained independence from Britain in 1966, it was one of the world's most impoverished countries. And in the decades that followed, however, it became one of Africa and the modern world's great economic growth and development success stories. The country boasts one of the highest sustained economic growth rates of any African country since independence. Now, that is an important detail before we continue, because in Africa, we've got this, unfortunately, this trend of liberation movements getting into power, getting into government, and then not being able to really bring the prosperity that they promised. But in Botswana, there's this interesting trend of they don't have a liberation party at the helm. Maybe that's one of the keys. But at the same time, since independence, that country has just developed immensely. And we're going to get into some of those stats. But one of the big stats that stands out to me definitely is if you look at, for example, how they started off when they gained independence. So when they gained independence, Botswana was one of the most impoverished countries in the world and one of the most unlikely to succeed. And now here's some mind-blowing facts. So at the time of gaining independence, the country had only 12 kilometers of paved roads, no electricity system, no university, 2 secondary schools offering 5-year courses, and only 100 people with secondary education. And furthermore, there was only 22 Tswana-speaking graduates and they were from South African universities. And in contrast, in another country on the continent, just to show how impoverished and pretty much from what a low level Botswana had to start with, a country like Zambia at the time had 10 times as many secondary schools, and Uganda 70 as many. And I mean, now if you take those facts into account, it's a really amazing story that where we see today, they're boasting a 9.7% growth rate that they're expecting this year. Let's start off with you, Odin. What are some of your thoughts there now that we've laid that groundwork?
Well, I mean, the semi sort of monarchist in me says it's all down to the great chief Seretse, But realistically, I think the economic sort of outlook is living proof of the fact that, it's one of the reasons Africa is poor in general is because of bad policy, not because of any sort of bizarre, blood and soil racial element, because we see a second example with North and South Korea just next to each other. So and also my favorite thing my favorite thing that I love every time people bring up about Botswana's success is like, it's because of the diamonds. I'm like, yeah, well, South Africa had a ton of diamonds and gold as well. And where is it now? So no, it's not because of that. It's because
we're
of
going to be
good policy.
we're definitely going to be getting into that, because a country like Venezuela has some of the largest oil reserves in the world, and look what happened there. Koketso, some of your initial thoughts as we start off the conversation.
Yeah, maybe probably the overarching thing for me is that Botswana is politically stable, and I think that really goes a long way. And it's a very vague term that South Africans just don't understand why the fuss about political stability and the like. But when you have political stability, people are willing to actually invest in not just your country, but even you as a people. So yeah, that's for me the big issue here. And it really does go to show that if you're just stable at a political level, that can trickle down from the top into the economy, into education, and yeah, the rest is history.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's good that both of you, well, specifically Odin, you mentioned the resource factor. And I mean, there's something that a lot of people talk about. They talk about the resource curse, but countries with a lot of natural resources tend to devolve into instability. But what we're seeing here is a country that kind of averted that. And in my master's thesis, one of my findings was how they averted that was through strong property rights. And we're going to be looking at their property rights as well. But that was one of the key things, because what it does is if there's strong property rights, you pretty much nullify any type of left-wing redistributionist populist movement that wants to redistribute or nationalize property and chase away any type of investment. So yeah, maybe that is a nice place to go into. So I've got the property rights stats here. So just to pretty much fortify that point, Botswana's constitution protects property rights, which are enforced in practice. The country's Bertelsmann Stichting score for property rights has been steady at 9 out of 10 between 2006 and 2020. Property rights enjoy sound legal protection and are enforced in practice. According to Freedom House, Botswana has a score of 5.9 according to the International Property Rights Index, thus ranking it 4th in Africa and 53rd in the world. The honoring of commercial and private property contracts is ensured by the courts, enforcing laws and protecting property, a generally independent judiciary, and the lowest levels of corruption in Africa. I think that's also very important. Together with strong institutions, create a favorable environment for secure property rights. So, and this is something you actually make a point of a lot on your Twitter, Koketso, is the importance of good policy and, good institutions. You made a point today about when someone asked South Africa has all this natural resources, what went wrong? And your reasoning was pretty much purely policy-based.
Yeah, absolutely. In South Africa's context, we've got the ANC, of course, who are in bed with the trade unions, and of course, bad policy like BEE. In the Botswana context, though, maybe it's a cultural thing more than anything, but there's a general respect for property rights among the Botswana that isn't actually so common in Africa. I mean, there's for everything from you not just owning your piece of land, but also whatever it is that you're actually producing at an agricultural level, you own that. So this notion that everything is communal isn't necessarily true. And because the base in Botswana, or with the Botswana starts off there, that's how they could actually build a constitution around property rights. Because at that point, back in the 60s, it was well understood what property rights should be. And they're clearly reaping the benefits here. We've actually gone in the opposite direction in recent times, where we're trying to take away property rights. But in the Botswana, it's actually culturally embedded in them, and that's why, especially people outside and people even in South Africa, are looking at Botswana as really a good destination to go and invest in there and potentially seek a new living or better start, I guess.
Sorry, Ernest, I would add to that.
I was just about to give the mic to you, Odin.
On a cultural level as well, I would add to that, on top of our cultural sort of respect for property rights, there's also the importance of both your own honor and the honor of your family, and by extension, one of the great tribes, your family, the 8, or is it 8 now? We're at 8 or 10, depends on how you count them. But the honor of that tribe, and the concept of something like a promise. I don't think there's any one of us who isn't friends with or related to somebody named Tsepang or Tsepiso. That the popularity, for those of you listening, that name basically revolves around the concept of a promise, that it must be kept and honored. And that is one of the most popular names in our culture. That is a sort of indictment as to how important the concept of honoring a promise is to us.
Absolutely. And I do think this is something that I would like to go into further when if I maybe do more studies in the future, is more of the cultural aspect, because I've gone in my thesis into the policy aspect and the institutional aspect, but there's a definite correlation. So let's take, for example, Venezuela. Or even Venezuela is the perfect contrast, because you can't really say, well, Botswana is successful because they've got this massively resource wealth, because you've got Venezuela that has the largest oil reserves in the world, but they went into the opposite route. So maybe to elaborate on that resource issue, I actually found that. So the argument can be made that the diamond industry is solely responsible for Botswana's growth and development. By 2003, the diamond industry produced approximately 40% of the country's economic output. Being blessed with an abundance of natural resources has proven to be a curse for many developing nations in the global south. Examples on the African continent include Angola, the Congo, Nigeria, and Venezuela, for example. In South America, relied heavily on its oil endowments to fuel short-term economic growth. But a decline in the global commodity market resulted in the resource-dependent growth being short-lived. The Botswana government and De Beers established the De Beers Botswana Mining Company, which provided a 50-50 split of diamond revenues and ownership. In contrast to Venezuela and Zimbabwe, where the state prioritized excessive nationalization of private sector assets and firms, the Botswana government decided to make the private sector the backbone of the economy by adopting a policy path of establishing partnerships between the government and the private sector, of which the long-standing revenue partnership with De Beers is the most prominent. So you can see a very clear divergence here in policy. On the one hand, you have a government that pretty much says, well, we've got all this natural resource. If we monopolize it, we get all the income. Whereas in the Botswana approach, you have a government that realizes, yes, we've got all this natural resources, but we also have a lot of people on the outside that really want to get their slice of the pie of these diamonds as well. And they are pretty much willing to give us even a 50-50 split just to get in on the action. So they realize, well, we might not be getting 100% all the way, but if we just get a 50-50 split, there's so much natural resources here that's already more than enough to develop our economy, keep things stable, keep things growing, and we also get all this international expertise coming in. Any one of you can respond, whoever has the first come, first serve.
I'll beat you to it, Odin. I actually wanted to bring up the same point that you brought up, Ernst, but yeah, it's exactly that. So it's almost as if, well, maybe not almost, but there's two things here, in that the new government at the time, they come in, former government, and they quickly realize that we don't actually have the knowledge or expertise, let alone the equipment to really do massive scale mining operations, particularly for diamonds. So they then reach out to the private sector, in which case De Beers becomes, the nearest company they can partner with. But the big thing here is that they're actually using that as a strategic advantage. There's no reason why any other country anywhere else on the continent can't do the exact same thing. In fact, in South Africa's case, there's actually quite a lot that South Africa can do to leverage their competitive advantage. But they simply aren't. And again, this goes back to policy, like I mentioned, where at a governmental level, the Department of Mineral Resources is really just out there to push an agenda by the ruling party. But in the Botswana's case, they realize that they have something good here. They realize that they don't have the expertise to fully exploit it. They bring in a partner who's got a lot to gain from partnering with the Botswana government. And then they build an economy off the back of that. The riches from there, or let me rather say the wealth that comes in from that, is then what builds more roads, more infrastructure, more schools, builds the university, does a lot of infrastructure development even inside of the capital. So it can be something, or a city of substance, because it's only been about 50 odd years or so, maybe a bit more, So it does really go to show that you can leverage a competitive advantage if you reach out to potential partners, and they will actually come in and help you out. It's a very good success story that I'd actually like to see modeled throughout the rest of Africa. But again, this isn't something we see or something that's common, because those in power typically want not just a piece of the pie, but the whole pie to themselves. And that wasn't the case with Botswana, particularly in Khama Senior's reign when he came in, him and, of course, those around him.
Odin, your thoughts?
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to point out, I've been sort of eyeing the chat here. And there's a lot of mention about diversifying or failing to diversify the economy. And I just wonder on the basis of what that claim is being made, because as you say, yes, diamonds are a big part of it, but they're going into a lot of bioenergy and renewables and all that kind of stuff, and telecommunications, starting space telecommunication stuff. So that's kind of thing. And I see our friend Chris Wyatt is in the chat as well. And old Martin here, that were quite protectionist in Botswana, and I say Botswana did nothing wrong. We did nothing wrong. Okay, everything is perfect. We did nothing wrong.
Odin, maybe now that Koketso has mentioned the Khamas, what are your thoughts on those two presidents? I know you've got some opinions there.
I you know what? Like I said, the semi-monarchist in me says if Ian Khama decided tomorrow that he wants to be the supreme chief of Botswana, I'd kind of be okay with that. I know it's ironic because I've got a Gadsden flag in the background there, but I'd kind of be okay with that if Ian Khama decided tomorrow he wants to be.
So maybe before you continue, just maybe for some context for those that are unaware, let me just get it here, the history of who all the leaders have been. So in 1965, after 80 years of the British protectorate, Botswana land was granted self-government status, becoming the independent Republic of Botswana in 1966. Seretse Khama was the first elected president and served until his death in 1980.
The great
BDP,
chief.
Yeah, the BDP, his party, has been in power since the first democratic elections in 1966. Kutumele Masire succeeded Seretse Khama as president and voluntarily retired in 1998. Masire was succeeded by by Festus Mogae, who finished his second term in 2008, to be succeeded by Ian Khama, the son of Seretse Khama. And the BDP won its 11th consecutive electoral victory in 2014 general elections, and the incumbent president, Ian Khama, started his second term. And then in 2018, President Khama stepped down as per convention at the end of his second term, being succeeded by Eric Masisi. So those two figures there, Seretse Khama and Ian Khama, the father and son, that's who you're talking about. Now you can continue just after that context.
Yeah. Ian and Koketso can chime in on this, and I think Colonel Wyatt there has his sort of opinions on Masisi. I'm not a fan of Masisi. I think he's a bit of a petulant child in how he deals with Ian, but that's that. And I think that this tete-a-tete and back and forth between them is to Botswana's detriment. But I would place 60% of the blame on Masisi. Yeah.
And you always told me, Odin, that Mr. Ian Khama was almost a very everyman after he retired and when he just became a regular citizen again.
Yeah. I mean, that's how he's living his life now. He's flying planes because he's a pilot. He's served in the military. It's not unheard of for him to show up to somebody's village and go to. I mean, he's a teetotaler, but to the local pub or whatever and have a Coke with people or whatever. It's not just a meme. It's not unheard of. It's something that he does and continues to do pretty regularly. So yeah, a lot of people have met the president / son of the great chief. Yeah.
And so here's the meat and potatoes of tonight's discussion, and that's the results of their policies that they've enacted. So Botswana has experienced incredible economic growth rates since independence in 1966, despite the unfavorable conditions and deficiencies that were present. Economic growth peaked in 1972 at 26%, and in 51 years since 1966, annual GDP growth has dropped below zero only twice. Once in 2009 and once in 2015. Now that's a feat to be challenged. So for perspective, the average sub-Saharan African country is poorer than the global average low-income country, and this trend is worsening. Between 1965, when Botswana became independent, a year before Botswana was officially independent, and at least 2003, the average growth rate of countries in sub-Saharan Africa has been negative. Botswana has defied this regional trend because between 1965 and 1998, the Botswana economy grew at an average annual rate of 7.7%. Now that is some incredible statistics there. And just to add to that, the percentage of the population that lived below the poverty line decreased from 59% in 1985 to 19.3% in 2009. So even though poverty is still at levels that need to be fought, I mean, from 59% to 19% is also the absolute achievement. Primary school enrollment improved from 66,000 in 1966 to 319,000 in 1995. Infant mortality rate fell from 100 per 1,000, so 1 in 1,000 children died in 1971 to 45 out of 1,000 in 1991. So they cut that in half. There's a lot to go there. It doesn't mean they've reached the peak and now they're just cruising. There's still a lot of work to do, but slashing infant mortality rate in half and taking poverty rate and slashing it not just in half but dividing it into third, that's pretty incredible. And I mean that's the result of sound policies, and that's what they did there from that relationship that they had with De Beers, is that they pretty much took that income that they had and they used that to develop infrastructure, to develop their country, and to invest in healthcare and education, which I think is pretty much the perfect model there. Let's start off with you, Koketso, in regards to those statistics that I mentioned there. What are some of your thoughts to add?
Yeah, man, I think those are really impressive stats across the board. You don't reach perfection overnight, I guess. So you have to start off somewhere, and you have to kind of build momentum with these things as well. It doesn't, you don't sign a bill into law today and then tomorrow all of a sudden things are for the better. It takes, if we have to be realistic, it takes a few generations as well. So again, if you have a parent who's done the schooling, the full schooling track, you're more likely to do the full schooling track. And I see Nzuzo there.
Straight up. He is a super.
Nzuzo has had his chance. Just a few weeks ago, me and him had a conversation about the Zulu monarchy, so he had a chance to talk about his tribe.
Because I gave him a tough time there.
Both of you also dropped into the chat there during that conversation.
Yeah.
Anyway, Odin, some of your, do you have anything to add there before we continue?
So I mean, in the interests of intellectual honesty, obviously there's the counter argument of when you start from nothing, it's easy to make huge gains as compared to when you're already higher up on the path. It's more difficult to make huge gains. Yeah. But I don't think that sort of diminishes the fact that they as Koketso pointed out, we had a momentum and it's kept going. Like it's just the fact that they maintain that momentum is in itself the best sort of endorsement of the policies currently in place for me.
Yeah, through several presidents as well. I think that's the notable thing too. So no one person can actually claim ultimate victory, I guess.
Yeah, and I see in the chat there's a lot of people like finicky about the exact numbers of the the reported things and reported poverty and the child mortality rate, to that I say, who cares? The point is they're doing fantastically. I don't give a shit whether they've brought it down to 19% or to 15%. The point is they're working miracles.
So I've got the first tweet that I want to look at. It's actually something, it reminds me of something that you once told me. I don't know, we're going to get to that. Let me just figure out how to share this on the screen, and then we'll get to that. Here we go. I've shared the screen quite a few times, and I'm still making sure I just do it correctly. All right, here we go. Okay, so what we see here, this is very interesting. So the statistic is new paper on national difference in time preference combines many different measures and standardizes them and extracts a common factor. Blue is people on average wait for future rewards. Red, people on average want immediate gain. So let's have a look here at this map. And I mean, can you spot Botswana on that map? There's like little purple
nice
island.
and purple.
A little purple island of delayed gratification. I mean, that you can't really say that's the silver bullet, but if you look at the rest of the continent, that is definitely, I think, an aspect that plays a role. The ability or the trend in your community to be able to delay gratification, not wanting to, we just want as much from these diamonds as possible. Now let's nationalize everything. Rather, let's see how we can do a 50-year plan and get as much out of it on that longer term timeline, rather than getting as much from it at this point. So Odin, let's start with you in regards to this idea of time preference and Botswana being this anomaly there in Africa. I mean, they are on the same level as Australia when it comes to future gratification and time preference here.
Yeah, so I'll sort of recall back to a conversation you and I had on my stoop when I still had my stoop. It's been rented out now. I'm not sad about it. I am actually. I'm probably going to drink about it tonight. But anyway, where we talked about how, you know, an environment shapes its people and the people shape the environment. And for myself, as a Motswana, it's like you have to understand that what we came from, the environment we came from, is a harsh one, a very unforgiving one, a very desolate one, and calling back to the whole concept of a promise being kept. The same thing I'm going to mention here with the concept of if you survive in an environment like that, you need to really plan for the future and plan quite well. You need to be able to delay gratification, plan and structure things quite well. And I think that cultural aspect comes forward into the actual governance of Botswana because of our mindset that, you know, we survived this because we planned well, we looked forward to the future. And that sort of expression, I know I'm always like, it's because of the culture, but a large part of the culture, it influences things. So I think that's the mindset being expressed into the government policies there.
You have got that proverb from Botswana, or that Tswana proverb that you always reference, the one about the granary or the grain. What is that
yes.
one exactly? Oh.
Yes, it's an old saying. It's basically that says hunger hides beneath the granary.
Yeah, so that's again that long-term thinking. Koketso, your thoughts on this time preference anomaly that we see here?
Yeah, maybe if I can draw a parallel here, and I promise this is not a reach, but if we have to be honest, income tax in Botswana, I think it's capped at 25% at the highest level. I stand to be corrected, but it's around that region. What that tells me then is that the government isn't looking to extract as much money from taxpayers in the immediate in the immediate term, because they actually they give you the room to actually create some wealth for your family and leave a legacy behind for your loved ones by not leeching you as a taxpayer. That's in stark contrast to their southern neighbors, who the limit there is 45%. So yeah, like Odin's mentioning, it does go right up into government and into policy, right down into the fiscal policy that the country governs with. And that's a great thing, if you're not giving away large portions of your income to the state, it actually allows you to do other things with it. Be it acquiring more land, acquiring more livestock, building up for your family where your family might have had none in the past. Remember, if you tie this in with more and more people getting educated, compared to 50, 60 years ago, you can kind of see where this is going, that there is actually a material benefit to putting your child through school because they can, in some material way, not only stand on their own financially, but because they take home a bit more of their income in comparison, they can do a lot more, not just for themselves, but also for their family and the like. That, of course, coupled with other free market principles that the government has been practicing since the 60s as well. So, yeah, it's definitely a cultural thing that then goes all the way up into government, and Botswana is seeing the rewards of it right now.
No, I think that cultural theme is going to keep coming to the surface. So there's another thing that I wanted to look at. So let me
just by the way,
go for it,
since my Gadsden flag is up there, I'm required to say even 25% is too high of a taxation rate as far as I'm concerned. Hashtag taxation is theft. But right. Continue.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to get to the next one that I think is very interesting, and it's this tweet from the Botswana government. Want to live in a well-run country? Botswana is known for having strong personal freedoms, such as freedom of the press and personal property rights. Now, I don't think it's vague or it's even hidden who this is directed at.
Like, I really miss classy trolling of this level. Like, this is trolling in a really classy way. Yeah.
I co-sign this. Actually, I'd do something like this.
This is such. Okay.
The
anyway,
thing is, right?
Sorry.
You have to be in a position to say something like this. So yeah, it's actually it's a pat on their own back,
Yeah,
absolutely. It's a little bit of a flex, if I do say so myself. So, and there's another thing that I wanted to bring under your attention. I don't know if you're aware of this one. Here we go. I don't think the audience might not be aware. So you've got the Botswana government benefits of regular physical exercise.
This is such a troll thread. I loved it.
Exercise boosts energy. Winded by grocery shopping or household chores, regular physical activity can improve your muscle strength and boost your endurance. So you've got the Chad Botswana government that tells you to lift weights and get those gains, bro, chase those gains. Well, the South African government's pretty much just saying, yeah, you're a victim. Don't do self-improvement. Self-improvement is from the devil or something.
Yeah. Yeah, no, give the person who runs this account a raise.
Yeah.
So while we're on the wholesome topic or the wholesome tweets, let me just get it up here. Where is that? Here we go. So Botswana is not just into lifting weights and trolling and flexing on their neighbors. They also know where their strength comes from. So this is just one example. I mean, the Botswana government posts a lot of Christian content. It's actually something that I've noticed. And Odin, you've also commented on it. So here, for example, their verse of the day: "Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus." Philippians 4, verse 6-7. So you get this type of content regularly from the government profile. This is just one that I saw to make the point. But yeah, so you've got this trinity of good institutions promoting lifting weights, getting those gains, and also some wholesome religious content. Koketso, you are also someone that's been vocal on social media about your faith as well. What are your thoughts on a government embracing their Christian faith in this way?
Look, I mean, I'm all for it. So I know that you can't please everyone. And part of the problem we face, not just in SA, but in other parts of the world, is governments really do try to please everyone. And in the end, you end up messing it up for everyone else, You have Christmas, for example, as a public holiday on your calendar, but you don't want to outright say that this is a Christian-leaning state. Why not say it? So our state definitely won't say that. Our state will even sever ties with other states. Maybe not sever ties, but will sour the relations with other states who do this, because again, it's all part of the ideology and the like. But yeah, if you're going to be Christian, rather go all in at a state level, particularly. And if you're not going to do that, then you need to actually state as a government, what do you actually believe in? What do you want your citizens to believe in? Where do the basis of your laws come from? We like to look at the Freedom Charter, for example, or the principles of the early African National Congress, who, guess what? African National Congress was founded by Christian men, so yeah, it's something that definitely needs to keep happening. It's kind of been watered down a bit over the years because of societal norms, I guess. But I like to see that the Botswana government isn't actually shying away from it, because that does kind of inform the rest of us that this is where the basis of their laws come in and come from. And also how citizens are expected to behave themselves when they're inside the borders there as well, biblical principles and all of that.
Yeah, but I mean, is it really a shock that a government, for example, posts Bible verses when at least 70% of your population is Christian? I mean, in South Africa, I wouldn't find it funny. I mean, there is a lot of different religions in South Africa, as with most countries now due to globalization. But if 70 or 80% in South Africa, it's almost 90% of your population is Christian. I don't think this is a strange thing to do. I don't think it's something that anyone should be outraged about. I think it's actually quite wholesome.
Maybe to add there as well, you wouldn't hear the Botswana government entertaining ideas of banning morning prayers in school assemblies, for example. And that's why they can. The same government will on their official accounts pass off messages that is a Bible verse. This part of the world, you would actually. It's not uncommon to hear debates around how prayer or Christian prayer or even hymns in school assemblies shouldn't be a thing, and the government will entertain this, of course, because they're trying to please everyone, including non-Christians.
Yeah. I would say just quickly, just to add, and again, the token libertarian, but libertarian right, and also Christian. They're obviously I admire their like you said, they're just balls to the wall spirit. We're 70% Christian. We're going to embrace being Christian, and on top of that, I would add, but if you're not, there is such a thing as religious freedom in Bots. It's not like it's a theocracy. There is religious freedom. And again, I say, it goes back to just call a spade a spade. I had a similar conversation, ironically, 2 days ago with somebody, and they said basically one of the biggest problems with the United States is that it's an empire that doesn't want to accept the fact that it's an empire. And Botswana is a Christian country that fortunately accepts the fact that it is a Christian country. Yeah.
So I see someone in the chat asked, let me just put it on screen here. Kevin Morris asked, how strong is Botswana army? So I actually have some Botswana Special Forces photos here that I wanted to present to you guys and to the audience.
Suffice it to say, when ISIS starts marching through Mozambique, it's only the BDF, the Botswana Defense Force, that are going to be able to do anything of repute. Like the rest of the SADC forces, like don't even dream they'll be in any way effective.
Right. So here we have. I can confirm the Botswana Defence Force Special Forces is among users of the FN Scar H assault rifle. So there is some. Let me just make those pictures bigger. Let me just find them. Where's that tab? No,
well, I mean, I see Colonel White here is backing up, saying that it is the strongest military in Southern Africa.
So they've got a little bit of a better picture. Let's move on to the next one. Just the absolute unit. And then the last one there. So there's another one that I also wanted to present. Let me just find that. Let me get that on screen. Here we go. It's this one. So yeah, here's another one of the Botswana Special Forces. Well, this specific tweet's highlighting the type of weaponry they use, but yeah, there's a better picture of the type of soldier you can expect from the Botswana Special Forces. So I hope that answers your question, maybe in brief. And if you want to get an expert opinion, I do think Colonel Chris Wyatt will be able to tell you exactly. And he says it, Chris Wyatt, Africa says, is the strongest military in Southern Africa. I mean, if you take South Africa's history into account in regards to how big our military and how militarized South Africa was, that's a pretty big feat when someone like Chris Wyatt says that you are the most well-equipped or the best military in the region. You're competing with a country that had nuclear weapons. So that's pretty much a very big feat. Odin, your thoughts on just before we move on those pictures that we looked at, and your thoughts on the Botswana military?
Yeah, some really solid gear, but on top of the gear being solid, I do like the SCAR, the FN SCAR. It's a very fun gun, but more importantly, they actually know how to use their equipment. They're trained, they're drilled, they are professionals. They are the sort of consummate professionals one imagines from the military of a developed or developing country. And as always, I guess the Tswana curse is that our military efficacy is limited by our generally small numbers. In that, like you said at the start, there's only 2 million in back home.
2.2 million. It's a very small country, yeah.
Which is odd because there's like 4 million of us in South Africa. So maybe at this point, the way things are going, we just cut off.
It's time.
The north. It's time. Cut off. Just cut off the northwest province and say,
oh, here we go.
All 4 million of you just go, leave. We're done. All 4 million of us are out. Peace. Deuces to the rest of y'all. Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see Mr. Dumodenga is also in the chat, a co-host there with Koketso on the Manpachia podcast. He's commenting with the Manpachia podcast. He says, I saw the Tswana government encouraging people to gym. Yeah, that's what we talked about a bit earlier. We actually highlighted that. So I see Dan Howard says, Botswana was an example of what to do right and why nations fail. Good book. Yeah, I have it here. It is a good book in many regards. I do think they are too quick to write off culture as an element or as a factor, but the analysis of institutions and why they matter is absolutely spot on. That definitely it pretty much makes the book a very good one in my opinion. Like I said, I have my disagreements with it. I wouldn't say it's the best book I've ever read, but it is a very good one if you're interested in the institutional arguments of why institutions are important. And I see Kevin Morris. I don't know if Kevin Morris has a sneak peek into my show notes because he says he's talking about anti-poaching, and that's the next thing I wanted to put on screen. So let me just get here that also for reference. 1 second. Here we go. So this is pretty much the essence of this tweet is poachers went into Botswana, they fucked around, and they found out. BDF killer poacher. It is its mission of defending Botswana's territorial integrity, sovereignty, and national interests. I mean, that's a pretty big way of. I mean, it's killing a poacher, but what Botswana is like, this is a matter of territorial integrity, sovereignty, and national interests. The Botswana Defence Force informs the public about an incident where members of the BDF patrol engaged poachers which resulted in one poacher being killed. So there is something interesting here. So it doesn't mean that, of course, poachers are in firefights with South Africans as well many times, and they are often also killed. But what we see here is the South African government has never flexed on social media where they're like, yeah, it happened. If you want to come try this, come try this. So this is also a very, very nice post to see. And I mean, Botswana has also a growing tourism industry. It has some of the best safari and game options that you can have in Africa. It has huge national parks that people are visiting with a very wide array of animals. Now, I hear it's much easier. It's a better safari experience there because there's still a lot of animals there to see as opposed to South Africa where it's dwindling. Odin, your thoughts on the poacher messing around and finding out?
Well, I mean, in case the Gatson flag in the background here didn't tip you off, yeah, I'm all for it. I am all for what I call a appropriate escalation of force, and I consider this an appropriate escalation of force, whereby if you don't, absolutely show, yeah, we're willing to put you in the dirt if you keep messing around with us, then they're gonna keep trying it. So I'm 100%, in line with that. Like, yeah. I say, why only one poacher killed? Why not all of them?
Yeah. Koketso, your thoughts on this treatment of poachers?
Well, the reason the South African government isn't necessarily flexing here is because, much like charity, a lot of the anti-poaching effort is actually done by the private sector and private donations. So yeah, they get the bragging rights more than anything. So yeah, the government really can't flex here because their dedicated units really work in tandem with the private players who supply equipment, personnel, training, the works. So yeah, it's good to see that the Botswana government has gone the other direction and is actually making a bigger concentrated effort, particularly against poaching. Because remember, the game in the country is actually a national asset, so it should be treated as such. Not just, these aren't just animals in the bush here. They contribute to your tourism industry in a material way, and various other industry, of course. So they should be protected as such. But yeah, in South Africa's case, most of that effort is done actually by foreign players and the private sector.
And I see Chris Wyatt says, I have worked with over 50 militaries around the globe. Working with the BDF was the best experience ever, hands down. So, I mean, there's more answers to those that wanted to know what the Botswana Defense Force is like. And I see a sideliner opinion says, in Africa, you cannot treat poachers with kid gloves. I absolutely agree. Because I think there's another point that quickly before we get too off track, poachers aren't people that are walking around catching animals with nets. These oaks are heavily armed, and if they encounter you, they will shoot at you. These aren't just people stealing something from the shop. These are oaks that are heavily armed, and they know that if they're caught, there are serious repercussions. So they will definitely shoot back, and they won't hesitate to kill people trying to catch them or trying to bring them to justice. So, I mean, this is just a reality. And I see Chris White also says more elephants in Botswana than the rest of Africa. That is insane. I didn't actually know that. That's an interesting little fact there. So do any of you gents have any other comments there on that before I move on?
Not really. Just that, like you said, poachers are heavily armed. Like, I don't know how many people on this stream are familiar, like, with firearms, but yeah, I mean, if you've ever fired a genuine AK, it's not a light rifle, and it's like 7.62 rounds pack a punch. Like, you have to take it seriously when 7.62 rounds are coming your way. So yeah. Shoot to kill.
I see before we continue, Kevin Morris says, wow, feather in your cap, Botswana, for protecting the animals and disgustingly sold out in SA by our government. The big government gives is our paper money. So the thing here is there's something else that you will see in the thumbnail of this episode, and that's the word pula. Now, it's on the coat of arms of Botswana. It's also the currency of the country. I know what it means, but I'm going to ask Mr. Odin Moja, because we've talked about this so many times, the significance of this word. Maybe just a little hint. When you pay someone in Botswana, you can literally make it rain. Can you elaborate on that, Odin?
It means rain. I mean, actually, one of my aunts is named Mpule. Shock, surprise, yes, a girl in the family named Mpule. Yeah, which comes from that word pula. And the whole concept is, if you live in a country where water is so difficult and so scarce. Even more, people say that in South Africa. South Africa's water difficulties is a walk in the park compared to what Botswana has had to deal with. So yes, like Colonel White says, there, it gives life. It's something that's so culturally ingrained into you that it makes sense that something like the currency would be named after it, and it is everything. That the rains are absolutely everything in Botswana.
Yeah. I mean, it's on the coat of arms as well, and it makes sense. You mentioned there, Odin, Botswana has a lot more struggles with droughts and with dryness and aridness. But I mean, you also have to take into account that Botswana is not nearly as blessed as South Africa as with the water infrastructure that we have. South Africa has many major dams. We have extensive waterways. We have a very, very extensive water system and infrastructure. Botswana is not blessed with that. And I mean, I know they're working on quite a few projects to rectify that, but that's something that we take for granted in South Africa. Now, Koketso, your thoughts on the significance of naming your currency literally after rain and also having it on your coat of arms? It seemed, like Odin explained, there seems to be a very strong cultural significance here.
There is, because it's not just about the rain, but it's also somewhat a declaration of blessings. So yeah, it's a way of actually, it's almost a greeting at this point, really. But yeah, it's a way of actually declaring blessings upon the next man. A way of well-wishing to each other as well. Rain brings happiness and life, etc. So yeah, it's not just a saying, but it's really saying, look, I wish you well till we meet again, that sort of thing. And yeah, that's why it's so significant. And I believe, them actually using that word so much is probably, I don't know why the flag is colored that blue, but I believe, I wouldn't be surprised if that's maybe one of the reasons, to declare the blessing even on the flag.
Odin, you've got some opinions on that Botswana blue, seeing as your clan also shares that same color. Can you maybe, now that Koketso has brought it up, do you have any thoughts on that Botswana blue?
I actually have my hold on, just let me step away for a second. I actually have the shirt.
Right. Well, Odin gets that. I think that's very interesting that you said there, because I see here, where was it now? Chris White actually says in the chat, it's so culturally ingrained that it's part and parcel of this American's mindset too. So we know that the Colonel spent a lot of time in Botswana. It seems that word also made a strong impression on him, and that's very nice to see. But it is definitely.
It comes with a gesture as well sometimes. You got to do the gesture with the hands.
Making it rain, dude.
Yeah.
And it does seem that it plays a very prominent role when it comes to the symbolism. And it seems like Mr. Moja is coming back. He wants to show off something here. I think I know what it is, but I'm not going to spoil it. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, Odin, can you enlighten the audience on what that is? We've had this chat many times, but maybe for the audience that don't know.
This particular pattern?
Yeah, just the color and the pattern. Why you fetch this shirt? Is it just a shirt?
It is I guess, to put it simply, are a traditional attire. You'll see this if you Google something like Tswana wedding. You'll see this. And this particular pattern, this khaka, is it's sort of like I guess, like, it means sort of like guinea fowl, because it's like the patterns of a guinea fowl. The patterns of it is I mean, to put it sort of in an analogy, it's sort of what the tartans of the Scots are to each Scotsman. It's a similar thing, almost, not exactly, but it's an analogous thing for us with these particular colors and patterns on each shirt. So I actually think that the blue on the flag could be a little darker blue. It might be, but I'm fine with that light blue. I know that my compatriot here disagrees, but I'm fine with the light blue.
Yeah.
All right, and I see Topo Barisang says blue is for water, black and white for cultural integration. That's very interesting. Well, that's you learn something new every day, and I always say on these streams, I always learn so much from my chat as well. There's always so many knowledgeable people with their own little shreds of knowledge that they can share. And I see here here we go. Chris White also says, Chris is showering us with information tonight. He's definitely going to have to come on the stream again in the future. He says the light blue is the sky and Pula. So that's very interesting. And yeah, it seems like here he says he translates. He says no, water and sky. So your Koketso, you are right on the money there. It seems like that is definitely what we're seeing here. But yeah, so yeah, that's on the aesthetic side of Botswana. You have that symbolism of rain. You have that blue, that very distinct blue. But then also, we've had this question so many times in chat, but I don't know the answer, and I don't know if any of you know. I'm not that big into crypto, but Goldfish asks, is Botswana crypto friendly? I unfortunately have no idea. I don't know if any of you gentlemen maybe have some insight into it, but it's a very niche question.
It is. I mean, I'm a software engineer, and so I am a bit into my crypto, but I haven't actually looked at the government policies of bots in terms of crypto, so I wouldn't know. But I mean, we can definitely find out. Goldfish, if you ever listen to my actual or our actual podcast, the No Script Show, I'll look into it and we'll discuss it on the next episode.
Let's do that. And I see Chris Wyatt again sprinkling some more knowledge. He says the flag's central black stripe and its white bordering stripes is a belief in racial cooperation and equality. That's very interesting. Again, just more knowledge, the more you know. So, guys, before we start wrapping up, I just need to get to some obligations here as well, seeing as the Oaks there seeing as we're talking about crypto and whether Botswana is crypto friendly. This show is sponsored by a crypto, some guys that help you out if you want to get into crypto, and that's Bitvice. And it's not a scam. I know these people, they are genuine Oaks that want to help you out. They really want to help people get into crypto if they're still a bit nervous about it or bit uninformed and don't know what to do. So Bitvice is the only platform in South Africa that allows you to buy Bitcoin and have it sent to your own self-custody by default. This means that you are exposed to zero counterparty risk. Your Bitcoin is much safer from hacks, confiscation, or regulatory capture when you self-custody it yourself. Bitvice offers hands-on guidance for setting up your self-custody solution. They will hold your hand, setting up your wallet if need be, or point you to the best solutions available on the market today if you would rather do it yourself. If you wish to get your friends and family involved in Bitcoin, Bitvice offers the highest referral fee in SA for sending clients their way. There's a link in the description. Very good, Oaks. I know the guys behind it. They are trustworthy, nice guys. And if you are still wanting to dip your toe into this, you can always check them out. There's a link in the description. Check it out. And just before we continue, I see we've been blessed with a 200 Rand super chat. Leuven Janse van Rensburg, baie dankie. Ek waardeer dit ongelooflik baie. He says, thank you Ernst and Co for an awesome educational stream. Learned a lot, Gert and Leuven. Baie dankie Gert en Leuven. Baie dankie vir julle bydrae tot die episode. Thank you very much, and I hope you guys have an excellent week ahead. I see here there was I see there was a comment here, Tanya, who says Botswana is only fiat friendly, so maybe they know something that we don't know. Like I said, I'm not an expert on the crypto scene there, so I won't be able to confirm nor deny that. So wrapping up, Odin, let's start off with you. We've had exactly the type of conversation that I wanted. We covered a broad range of topics, didn't get too much into the nitty-gritty of a single one. I think we gave a nice little overview here. Your final thoughts on everything we discussed tonight, something that maybe you want to leave the audience with?
Yeah, so to start off, just a quick thing to your ad read there. I guess you're getting almost as good at ad hoc ad reads as I am on my show, but that's just me. Yeah, flexing myself. But okay, so overall, to my main point would be there is no utopia. Honestly, there is no utopia. But if yes, I know like people like Martin have a thing against Botswana's very hard immigration policies. And I say they could rework their immigration policies, but I also understand from a logistics standpoint, when you have a population of 2 million, you can't just open the floodgates to everyone. You kind of have to be and preserving our culture and our and what it means to be Botswana.
Yeah, if 2 million Zulus were to immigrate to Botswana tomorrow, that would significantly change the
it's no longer
identity of the
Botswana.
nation.
Yeah, it's no longer Botswana. So preserving our I guess identity or outlook of the world is important, and it is worthwhile. But that being said, they should probably rework it to an extent. And I think that there's always this talk still of people. Well, I guess not anymore, since like New Zealand is now like a prison, and Australia, sorry, is now a prison colony again. But there's all this talk from South Africans about, oh, I want to immigrate to England, or I want to immigrate to Australia, or whatever. And I understand why you want to leave South Africa. But to that I say, if you want to go somewhere, but that reminds you of South Africa, but you're tired of the problems in South Africa, then really, and I think you agree with this, if you had to move out of South Africa, Hans, but I know you're going to stay there till the end of all time. But realistically and more feasibly for a lot of South Africans, why not consider Botswana? Like it's a lot like South Africa in many ways, but why not consider there? That I would encourage. It's a difficult process, I admit, but it's a worthwhile one once you get through it. And I guess the last wrap up thought would be, again, culture is very important, and much of what the government of Botswana is what you're seeing as an expression of Botswana mindset and worldview and cultural values.
Absolutely. Before we get to you, Koketso, there's just something I want to read here. A sideliner opinion says the people from Botswana are friendly, peace-loving people. Great asset to Africa. Wotan and Koketso, two great samples. Thank you very much, sideliner opinions. Koketso, your final thoughts on everything we discussed tonight? Maybe just something you want to leave the audience with too that they can think about.
Yeah, I think maybe for a lot of Botswana who are in Botswana, I don't think they give themselves enough credit. I suppose this is a natural response because everyone is overly critical of their own governments, I guess. But yeah, I really don't believe they give themselves enough credit, particularly in terms of what the actual state has achieved over the past, since the dawn of their independence, when they were initially a protectorate under British rule. So yeah, I think maybe this is a reminder, or at least at the very least urge them to just look back at what has been achieved and many of the privileges that they enjoy, or maybe not privileges per se, but the many things they don't have to deal with that a lot of their neighbors have to deal with. Talking specifically about Zambia, Zim, South Africa as well. Mozambique isn't too far. Angola's off in the corner somewhere, So, yeah, I really don't think they give themselves enough credit. And maybe it's time to maybe just step back a bit and celebrate things like 9%, 9.7% GDP growth. That's almost in double-digit territory, while some of their neighbors are really not having such a great time. So, yeah, I think they really should do that. And like you said, as a South African ID holder, my first choice, if I am to leave the country, is definitely going on the N4 and crossing the Lobatse border post, as I've done more than a few times already.
Quickly, like, burn your South African ID. Be like, "What's good, fam?"
Odin has actually denied quite a few people their passports into Botswana on Twitter. I've seen.
I'm sorry.
The Setswana on the language or the country, you get a
denied, just out of the country.
So I see.
We'll gatekeep for the government there. We'll be the first line.
Lazan says there's a small Afrikaans community here in Gaborone. We love the Botswana outlook on life. No place is perfect, but people respect cultural values and differences here. That's very nice to hear. And Ronaldo Gous has given us a super chat here at the tail end of the stream. Ronaldo says, "Can the mansplaining please stop? Where are the female voices? This is an orchestrated attack on women in the online space. Hashtag online GBV." Ronaldo Gous always on his finger on the pulse on what is hot right now on social media and exactly what we needed to be talking about. Thank you very much. I'm going to have both of these guests on in the future so we can talk about online GBV. Absolutely. But thank you for the super chat, Mr. Ghost. I really appreciate it. Bye, donkey.
Cool guy. I enjoy his memes.
Let's see. Tabi Resane. I'm assuming this is family of yours, Mr. Koketso.
That's my mother.
Good evening, Mrs. Resane. She says, I would be thrilled if Koketso would consider moving to Botswana. He would be 32 kilometers from WotanZA gate to his home where mom is. That's a nice, a wholesome way to end tonight's stream. But yeah, thank you very much to both of you for your time. This has been an excellent chat. The live chat section as well enjoyed this conversation. They said it was very interesting. A lot of interesting questions, a lot of interesting perspectives as well. I learned a lot, not only from my guests, but also from you in the chat, specifically you, Mr. Wyatt. You really dropped the knowledge here tonight. I'm going to be having you on definitely in the future. But Koketso, Odin, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for an enlightening conversation. And then also everyone, maybe before I say goodbye, let's start off with you, Odin. Where can people find you? This is your show moment. Let loose. Where can people find you?
Twitter handle is at WotanZA, WOTANZA. You can also catch myself and you, Ernst, actually on I guess what is now monthly, the No Script Show at No Script Show, all one word. So yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Koketso, where can people find you if they want to hear more from you?
If you're willing to put up with my nonsense, give me a follow over at Twitter or just send me a DM. That's Koketso Resane, name, surname. Otherwise, let me get my radio voice on here. Check me out on the Man Patriot podcast every Monday evening at 6 p.m. for great views on current affairs, economics, and libertarian affairs.
No, that was perfect. And before we're getting very close to saying goodbye, but I see Chris Wyatt snuck in a final little super chat there. He says Ronaldo's chat mentioned, my upper chats don't. I did mention. Oh wait, you gave Chris gave a sticker here that I wanted to get to, but I forgot about it. He gave a $4 super chat sticker. Sorry, Mr. Wyatt. Thanks for reminding me. Those are two of Chris's super chats. Thank you very much. Well, it seems like we're not going to be able to end the stream because more's coming in. Peter Servanga just sends 2 laughing emojis with a 35 Rand super chat. Bye, Donkey. Thank you very much. Kia leboga. And then also, I see Kevin Morris says, night, guys. Bless you all. The Freighter Watcher says, thank you, everyone. Great conversation on stream and chat. All right. I think that's it. No more reading of the chat. These oaks need to get to bed or have any other responsibilities that they need to get to. I've kept them here long enough. Thank you very much for everyone tuning in. Thank you to my guests again. I hope you all have an excellent evening. And
it is afternoon for me. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Have a good one.